There was a bunch of rules. There were 10 rules that wwere punishable by death if you violate any of them, like politicking against a fellow brother, showing weakness. There were a lot of formal rules, and then the name. They kind of amended the name. It was still Mexican Mafia, which the term Mexican Mafia, of course, mafia is kind of like a respect to a well-known organization, the Italian mob.
Cosa Nostra, thing of ours.
Nostra, yeah. So I say we, Güero Buff decided mafia, but Mexican Mafia. So when they did the formal rules, they said, okay, there were guys that wanted to change the name. They wanted to drop Mafia so people wouldn't confuse the fellas with the Italians. And everybody else said, no, we're good with that. They said, well, what about, they compromised. How about M? E-M-E. M is the Spanish phonetic pronunciation of the letter M. So the guy started, I tattooed M on my arm later. So M was another name in reference to the Mexican. Anybody that said, hey, is he from the M? They know, is he from the Mexican Mafia? So they started terrorizing through the 60s. You had other prison gangs that formed, the NF, Nuestra Familia. They formed as a resistance group against the MS, so they became rivals. Then the Aryan Brotherhood. And most of the Aryan Brotherhood guys, we knew them from the lockup units from fighting. They would fight side by side with us against the blacks. So they were natural allies. And it wasn't predicated on race, that they hated blacks and blacks hated them. But we didn't look at the blacks, again, as, oh, we hate you because you're black. No.
Power.
Our animosity was based on power, competition. And then, so the NF was our enemy, so they formed an alliance of convenience with the BGF, Black Guerrilla Family, and then we formed a similar alliance of convenience with the Aryan Brotherhood. So now you got those two gangs going against the other two gangs. And what I can tell you is for that homicide I committed, I went in 69. I ultimately got out in 75. I don't know how that happened. I did 6 years total.
I mean, you certainly would have had a few violations while you were inside, right?
More than that. I killed 6 people while I was behind bars and never got caught. And that's why I say I have to go it my way, because if you start asking me questions, I'm going to tell you I can't talk about them because I can't. But I can tell you this. I killed 6 inmates. I was a co-conspirator, and I don't know how many more. And in the ones that I committed personally, I can still remember as I'm stabbing in a couple of incidents, I'm looking at some of the eyewitnesses, again, like an out-of-body type of thing. I've got my target. I'm stabbing them repeatedly. I know I'm taking them out. I look, I see the eyewitnesses, and I see the look on their eyes of like shock and awe as they're beholding this. And after I get away, I see them somewhere in the prison, talk to them casually, and some of them would say things like, hey, I didn't see nothing, because they know I made eye contact with them. I said, then let's not talk about it. And that was that, So
I'm not going to ask you about him, but I'm just going to ask you, how is it that you were not charged with anything?
Was never caught. Was nehave caught.
They didn't have cameras in the
They didn't have cameras. They didn't have, they had eyewitnesses. And that, today you have informants, you have eyewitnesses that come forward because they know they're going to be protected. Back then, there's no real PC. There's no real way to protect people. It's very difficult. So these guys but it was a shock and awe because they're seeing it happen. And when you make the eye contact, I didn't plan that. It just happened, and it worked in my favor. And I wasn't like a big bad guy or anything. I was deadly. I was starting to enjoy killing, but I didn't flaunt it. I was a normal guy, walking with the inmate population, respecting guys. They respected me, but they knew I was a big homie. They knew I was a made guy, as they said.
Well, let's not talk about your cases, but give us an example. How does it go? How does something like that come about? If somebody says, okay, Give us an example of what would happen to create the offense that would say, okay, you got shot callers, right, or somebody, right, saying. So walk us through, how does something like that happen? How do you identify an offense that says that's worthy of taking this guy out?
Well, most of ours were enemy, guys that were rivals. There's other guys who sympathize with the rivals that assist the enemy. Most of it was adversarial, like that, like street gang rivals, the White Fence VNE thing. Inside now you got the M and NF and BGF thing. So that you got.
What's the process then for determining who gets hit? Who authorizes that? Is there a council? I mean,
no, we already know who's who. I mean, if you are an enemy, if you're an NF member, it's open season. We know
you don't need approval or anything else.
No,
it's just if the opportunity presents itself,
right.
It's your duty to take them out.
But now, if you're in the adjustment center and Steve rips you off for drug money, we don't know this on the general population. So Steve comes out to the yard and the word filters out that, hey, Steve owes money. Collect it from him or do what you got to do. Mm-hmm. Or if you flagrantly ripped the guys off in there and said, up yours or whatever, then the word comes out, hit him because he ripped off so-and-so. That's an incident that happened. They hit a black guy, Marcel Thomas, and because he had ripped off one of the fellows in the adjustment center. So Black Dan and Sailor got him on the upper tier, front and back, and stabbed him. They didn't tell him nothing. They just approached him, and so there's so many reasons. Unpaid debts, and the word can get out in a kite, a written communication.
Right.
We call kites or notes. And it can get through correspondence. If I'm writing to someone that's corresponding with another member in another prison or wherever that it could be the same prison. If I'm locked up and I can't communicate with another member, but I'm writing to that other member's sister that's on general population, I can send a coded instruction. She can put it in a letter coming back into that same prison on the general yard. You interpret that and you know what it means. You take care of the target. So it's just so,
Give us an example of what a coded instruction would look like. I mean, we've been on wiretaps before. Yeah. Somebody says, hey, I need 6 spare tires. We know what that means, or something like that. How did your coded instructions come across?
A lot of it is very simple. When you do me a favor, when you talk to Steve, give him my regards. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. So Steve is the target. When you see Steve, give him my regards.
Leave a message. Take him out.
That means take him out.
Could you just independently take somebody out?
What's that?
Can you independently take somebody out, or does somebody have to approve it?
No, independently I can. The only time a made member cannot kill somebody without approval is if you're killing a fellow member for some infraction, because you have to know that this isn't a politicking thing, that this is real, that he did something that's worthy of being killed. Or if you have a guy beneath you, say a drug dealer that's generating money for you, and he's underneath you, and he did something to offend me on the streets, and I want to have him take him out. I have to go to you first as a courtesy and say, hey, your guy ripped me off. This is the incident. This is the proof. So he's going to go. And then you might tell me, well, then let me handle it for you. That way you can replace him with somebody else or whatever.
Right.
So there's a rhyme to, there's a rhyme to all the madness on how to proceed. And it's pretty structured. It's not even in writing, but it's all respect, and it all comes over time. They've perfected it over time.
Right. Now, do all of these activities take place in prison, or are there some times where somebody gets out? Because really, I think what you were saying, and I think what people need to understand too, Mexican Mafia, it really exists in the prison, right? It's not like you've got people that were formerly members, right?
Right.
That are members, but they're no longer in prison. The real power is while everybody's in prison.
The street, 1970, some of the older members, like the founder, Widow Buff, and a few others started being released from the inside and started drug activity, but not necessarily on behalf of the organization. It was for themselves, and they took care of some of the brothers that were behind bars. That's 1970. 1975, when I'm released, you got members like Joe Morgan, highly placed member, older gentleman, and a few others that are out when I get out. So I come out with this energy. I'm already a known killer for the organization. I told you I killed 6 guys.
You're about 25 years old now, right?
I'm whatever it would be, from 49 to about 25, not yet 26, and I come out with this dream. I was a non-user, very rare. I didn't use heroin. Everybody else did. There's maybe 3 of us that did not. So that's a plus. I wanted to make money. I wanted to take the organization to a higher level. Joe had a connection with a drug family. They didn't call them cartels back then. They call them families. So Jesus Araujo was the head of the Araujo family. He's got descendants now that are younger that many guys you, Steve, might know but I always ask the cartel guys, is this the same? Is he a descendant of Jesus Araujo, which is Chewy? Mm-hmm. So anyway, he was Joe Morgan's connection for heroin and cocaine, and Chewy, who I met later while I was out, he gave us unlimited. He said, whatever you want, it's available. And so my thing is, at the time, is let's get organized and let's install our dealers. So we had members that were living in Northern California. LA was like our titular headquarters. Mm-hmm. Okay. So our headquarters in LA, we had guys everywhere. Now, Northern California, we had guys that had parole to Bakersfield, 2 to Visalia, 1 to Hayward, and a couple to San Francisco. So I'm telling Joe, I said, we got all the brothers in place, plus the dope dealers in LA. Let me handle that. Let me find out all the guys that are dealing dope. I'll find out, and we'll start systematically replacing them with our dealers, or they sell our dope. We give them an option. Mm-hmm. So like a sales rep. I wasn't the kind of guy that would talk. I have a movie that was made based on my life story called Mundo. And in the movie, my character is portrayed as some street bully, talking down to gang members. I never talked down to gang members. I always treated them like men, the way I would want to be treated. But my message was clear. Yeah, I knew they were selling dope. I said, from now on, you're going to sell our dope. This is the deal we're going to give you. It's going to be consistent, the quality, and most of the people complied. The ones that did not comply, we killed them right there on the spot. And then we replaced them almost immediately. Mm-hmm. On a couple of occasions, we went back to install new members or new dealers, and the crime scene tape was still up from the ones that we had taken out.
Jeez.
And it was no big deal for us. It was business. We never looked at it like, oh, I killed somebody and I couldn't sleep at night or whatever. No, I mean, that's how warped.
Yeah, no remorse.
No more remorse, and you would know that from dealing with cartel guys. I mean, they're fanatically sick.
Right.
It doesn't have meaning, significance. There's no value to human life. Well, we were the same way, but we were not shock and awe because we didn't want that kind of heat. Mm-hmm. We wanted it to be, we wanted the message to get accomplished and install our drugs, keep the heat off us as much as we could. That if there's the right way to do things, that's what we wanted to do, and that's what we thought we were doing. So that was I call that build. We were spreading the Eme gospel and building the foundation that you see today. Back then, it was kind of loose. There was no such thing as sureños. We called them Eme associates. Some were highly placed. Some were just run-of-the-mill people. We never utilized street gangs to perform murders for us. Our thinking was once we do that, they did everything else. We had them selling dope, acquiring weapons, whatever. Anything to make money. except to kill somebody, a target. If we recruited a gang member to do that, we felt we'd have to kill them because they had too much knowledge.
They had
And they may come
information
after you.
Yeah.
heavy information on a heavy case that could put us away. So no gang members. We did our own work, and I was a specialist at that. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was going to get away. On and on and on.
Did you have a favorite way of committing murder?
No, I didn't.
Was it a gun or a knife? Or?
Mostly guns. Yeah. I wasn't much into lives. Too sloppy. I wasn't into torture or anything like that. Just kill them, get them eliminated. If they need to be out of the way, the quicker they die, the better. So it was mostly.
And was it leaving them there to leave a message? Did you hide bodies, or what did you do? Just leave them where they were?
Yeah, just leave them where we killed them. The message, like in the gang world, like replacing the dealers, the message was. You didn't have to hang people from bridges or none of that. You didn't have to do that because the gang community was already in lockstep. Like, oh shit, this is real. This is happening here. It's happening here. That's the message. They know. Mm-hmm.
But so the leadership outside the prison now, you guys are composed of people from actually rival gangs, right?
Yes. Unified now.
But is there still? So if you're unified at that level, what about though when it gets to the street? Like for example, NF and V&E. Are you still at odds on the street even though you're unified at your level?
There was a period of time in the 90s. This is after I'm gone now. There's an evolvement process. In the 90s, the first of all, I can probably interject this real quickly. In 1988 and 1989, 2 prisons were built, Corcoran State Prison and Pelican Bay. And they were built in the hope of disrupting communications between all the prison gangs and their constituents. Mm-hmm. So when they put everybody in those prisons to do that, they thought, good, we got all the leaders away and we can do it. So what did the Mexican Mafia do? They reinvented themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's what gang members do. They reinvent themselves, especially behind bars. They created what's called a mesa system. The mesa system is comprised of, I'll just give you an example. I'm in Pelican Bay. My homeboy, Morgan. Yeah, let's say my homeboy Morgan is
Captain Morgan. I'm Captain Morgan.
Oh, Captain Morgan you're in Folsom Prison. You're in Folsom, okay, and you're not an MM member because they got all the prison gang guys in Corcoran and Pelican Bay, but you're a highly placed Sureño. We call them camaradas. Camarada literally means
like comrades,
buddy.
compatriots.
Yeah, buddies, yeah.
Yep.
So a camarada in the structure, in the Sureño structure, is the highest placed Sureño. So you, Captain Morgan, you're a camarada, a highly placed Sureño. I send word to you, create a mesa system of 5 guys. It's got to be an odd number. And
why?
I'll tell you.
Okay.
And in those five guys in the mesa, you guys are going to run the yard, all the drugs, all the taxing, everything that goes on, and you're going to get a good cut of that because you're on the front line. And so this is played out in all these prisons, right? And now the reason for the odd number is you're going to have situations that come up and that you are representing me. I'm giving you authority to represent me, full authority, okay? So whatever you do, make sure it's the right decision, and you 5 are going to vote on it. And when you vote, there won't be a tie because 5 is an odd number. So when you have that odd number, mm-hmm. if it's 2 and 2, the 5th guy is a tiebreaker.
Right.
If it's kill somebody because he disrespected whatever your politics are, you're right there. You're witnessing it. I'm over here in Pelican Bay. You're representing me. So do a good job. So all the prisons had their mesas, and the mesas were created for that purpose. So now they take it further. Say, well, why can't we do this on the streets? And you're thinking, well, the gang members, no, it's going to be a hard one because these guys have a history, decades of fighting against each other. So they came up with a plan. The plan was no drive-bys. They spread that word in meetings. I have multiple videos of that, where they spread the word. They're having meetings. They're talking to the guys. No more. Anybody that does a drive-by, we take care of you. So the word was put out. No more drive-bys. Because they were benevolent? Because they didn't want to see innocent people killed? That's what all the community leaders were saying. Hey, these guys are doing what our police can't do. They're stopping all the killings and the innocent people getting hit.
Yeah, but that's not the reason.
That's not the reason. Their reason is they want to harness the energy and put them under their umbrella. What way to do it? No drive-bys, ethnic cleansing, many areas that had blacks, attack them, run them out of your area. We don't need blacks in our area. So they started that program. Orange County, kill any black. There aren't that many blacks in Orange County anyway, right? At that time. But it was a galvanizing tactic, a manner of getting all these guys under one cause.
You know who else did that? I'm giving you a history lesson, but it's Joseph Goebbels and Adolf Hitler. You unify against a common enemy,
Right.
and that way you can bring disparate people together. So who did they identify? Same way you talked about the blacks, they identified the Jews.
Yeah.
That was a way to bring all these different people. I mean, they're utilizing, what I'm saying here is they're utilizing tactics that have been used on a global level
Sure.
to
Yeah.
do this.
It's a tactic. Yeah, it's a universal tactic. And the bottom line, as long as it works, as long as their ultimate goal is achieved, which is the distribution of drugs, the control of the gangs in the furtherance of these enterprises, then you got them eating out of your hand. I questioned. Remember, I had already turned. I was out of the picture, but I keep up with everything. I keep up with all of that. It says, I don't think the gangs are going to let that happen. I mean, you're treating them like bitches. You know, I mean, gang members, they're not bitches. And so my crime partner, Sailor, who I kept in touch with, said, no, I think that's a good idea if they can do it. Well, they did it. It took time. There were gangs that resisted. All the major gangs at one point or another resisted. They all got greenlit. After a few of them got killed or beat or whatever, they came back to the table and said, hey, what does it take to get back in good graces? Hey, you pay a fine. Well, they just came up with a number. Or they paid the most important thing is they're on board now. Mm-hmm. Then they developed assassins from within their own gangs, like 18th Street, Coco, and I forget, Termite and Coco, two major assassins, killing their own gang members. In the Inland Empire, in San Bernardino County, there was what they call the dead president's case. You can Google it and check it out. What they did is they got some Sureños, highly placed Sureños, to call a meeting of all these presidents of these different gangs in San Bernardino. And they met in a garage. When it was all over, 4 of them were dead. And the killers, a couple of the killers grew up with them. Their mothers knew each other. I mean, you would think that a gang member, I always say, when you join a street gang, your street gang family becomes 1A and your natural family becomes 1B. When you evolve into a Mexican Mafia member or a Mexican Mafia Sureño, a hardcore one, they become 1A, your natural family becomes 1B, and your street gang becomes 1C. It goes down in stature. So when these guys followed the direction of a Mexican Mafia a member from prison who directed them to take these guys out for not complying with the drug thing, from within their own ranks, they accomplished this. And it was, I call it the 9/11 of the Inland Empire. I mean, that's how dramatic that was, and the message it sent to all the gangs everywhere, especially in Southern California, this can happen to you within your own ranks. I used to like saying the inside controls the outside. If you do not comply, once you see that we're established out there and have all this control, if you are selling dope and you don't want to pay taxes, you don't want to pay the piper, you don't want to get with the Mexican Mafia program, what's going to happen? First, you're green-lit. If you're able to evade the other gangs on the street, they're going to get you in the county jail, which I call Los Angeles County Jail is Mexican Mafia headquarters, like a clearinghouse. It's the biggest facility of its kind in the world. population-wise. I think Rikers Island might be second, but they're right there. If you get through the LA County Jail, your life isn't worth a nickel in a state prison. So you have to lock up. You got to go to protective custody, and what do you lose if you do that? You lose your status.
Yeah. Man, this is
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
well. I mean, but see, that's the thing too. Is that one of the things we learned about from yesterday? Even talking, William Rodriguez was here, the son of one of the major members of the Cali cartel. But people are saying, because we'll have people ask us, we're both cops. They say, why are we interviewing you? You have to understand who you're out there against. I mean, if I don't understand you, I can respect you in a way that says, look, first of all, I respect your capabilities, your ability, the way you guys organize. If I disrespect that, I put my life in danger.
Right.
So you really do have to understand the way you think, the way you structure things. So we had some moral qualms even yesterday talking about interviewing one of the guys, because Murph ran against Pablo Escobar, and those guys down there,
Of course.
Yeah, and so we're sitting there going, but the other thing too, there's a duty to tell the story, and it's not to say we're not glorifying it, and neither are you, because we're going to talk about your transition, what happened. But it's really, if we don't get into this and understand this, if people don't understand how intricately the Mexican Mafia, MA, is organized and what it takes, you can't dismantle an organization just by saying, hey, let's go get these guys. How's the structure? The biggest thing is, where is power held? Who holds the power? Right. How do you disrupt that? So this for us, we like doing these things we call master classes. This is like a master class on Mexican Mafia. So, but you talked about, you first of all, you've mentioned Pelican Bay. I've seen some videos about Pelican Bay and stuff. Where's the toughest prison in California at?
When you say toughest, there was a time. Everything has a season. The Pelican Bay used to be, until these new laws came into effect that released everybody to a general population. No more SHU, Security Housing Unit. That came into existence, I think, sometime after. I was probably the first SHU guy, or among the first SHU guys, before there was a SHU. They didn't have anything called SHU, so when Sergeant Hankins at one point locked me up, it was really throw away the key and keep me in the adjustment center indefinitely. So he did that to some of us because of our suspected involvement in homicides. And I still have the chrono where he says, to protect, for inmate safety and staff safety, we're making Mendoza an EMED director's caseload, is what they labeled it, member. So they created this SHU unit, security housing, which then became a formal housing. Now they did away with it because of the politicians. California is a very liberal state. And as you see throughout the country, there's a lot of this going on where the bad guys become the victims. And they don't understand that a career criminal is like a cancer. And the cancer, if you allow it to spread, it's going to spread. Just like the construction of Corcoran and Pelican Bay was made to isolate the cancer, hopefully, but it didn't work because they reinvented themselves. Okay, now when you start housing all these guys together again, all you're doing is strengthening, you're fortifying their way of communicating. You have cell phones today. I'm still amazed at how they get them.
They sneak them in. Well, they're co-opting prison staff, using drones. We're seeing now where drones have brought in stuff, drugs and phones, and dropped them in the prison yard.
So here's my rhetorical question to you guys. What's more dangerous, and probably with the way, because I'm asking it, you're going to know. What's more dangerous, a cell phone or a shank?
A cell phone.
Of course. It's very difficult to kill a guy with a shank, especially if he knows that you're after him. He's going to run, he's going to dodge, he's going to fight back, whatever. It's not an easy task to kill somebody in prison with a shank. But a cell phone, you can order people. The way they operate now, made members hardly do any killings themselves. They direct Sureño gang members and others to do their killing. A friggin' cell phone. I know of examples where you have a guy in a California state prison on a conference call talking to a guy in Tijuana, Mexico, working out there with the cartels, talking to a guy in a federal prison, and talking to a guy in Los Angeles, all on a conference call, directing traffic, talking in code, we're not going to know we know you're going to know that
We
they
know
want
something's
something
going
done.
on. We just don't know what it is.
No, it's called carnival talk.
Yeah.
So when they talk the carnival talk, they can use certain words to mean certain things. Oh, yeah, I know he's saying that they want to kill him, but you really don't know what they're saying. But you know that it's not a good thing what they're saying. You know?
Let me ask you a question. When they got rid of the shoe units, weren't there ME members that were kind of coordinating that with particular politicians who were so liberal they thought they were doing the right thing?
They're always at work behind the scenes with phony things. They did a hunger strike. The hunger strike was part of that. Was a big part of that, and even that was a farce because you have access to the canteen to purchase food, and so they stockpiled that food, but they rejected the issue from the state, the prison food. So it makes it look like these poor guys are starving, but they're not really starving. And so that brought additional attention. When you have the liberal politicians, they've existed forever. They call themselves prisoner rights activists, things like that. And there's a place for them. I'm not saying there isn't. If you want to checks and balances, whatever. But most of these guys are subversive. They're actively involved, smuggling drugs, many of them. Right. I'm not saying all of them. Smuggling drugs. There was a case with Angela Davis back in the day. She smuggled, or she was assisted in the gun that was smuggled in by another attorney was traced back to her, things like that. Yeah. So they are actively involved.
So they're just being used as lackeys by the leadership.
And then you got politicians that are liberal. They're liberal politicians, and they think they can fix somebody. The pendulum historically will shift from rehabilitation to punishment and back. Constantly shifting, and it's like a career criminal does not want to be rehabilitated. So why would you try to put him out on a yard, mix them in with people that want to do good time? You're putting them there, and you're putting a wolf with all the sheep.
Exactly.
And he's going to run things from the yard, and he can supervise. I'm on the yard. Okay, I went on a hunger strike. I did all this thing legally. I successfully got the shoe unit closed down. So now from Pelican Bay, I'm on a regular prison yard, and everybody on that yard knows I'm a big homie. I don't need the mesa anymore. Those 5 guys that was running the yard for me, I don't need them anymore.
Because now you're in direct contact.
I'm in direct contact. So I let them know if something happens to me, then you guys can reinstate yourself in the absence of another big homie.
So you reinvented yourself. You became a victim. You got them to release it. Get you out of the shoe unit because that actually, rather than doing what they thought it was going to do, it only furthered your goals, not their goals.
Right.
I mean, it's outrageous what the liberal politicians do. Well, and they're making it more dangerous.
And then staff, like the wardens, they kind of understandably rely on these prison gang leaders, Mexican Mafia leaders. They rely on them to keep the homicides down and make themselves look good. I mean, nobody wants to see a lot of killings on racial wars and this and that. So they it's like going to a gang leader on the streets and saying, hey, keep your boys under wraps or else I'm going to make your life miserable. Well, they kind of do the same thing with these guys. Control your guys.
So keep it to a tolerable level where it stays under the radar. And because 5 homicides is better than 15 homicides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can show those numbers and everything. So now what happens? The guys that are performing or that are subject to performing, which is any sureño, for a big homie, if I give you an assignment to do, you got to do it because I'm there to supervise. I mean, I'm not right in your face, but I'm there, and the assignment's already been given to you. You got to carry it out. If it's a hit, if it's whatever it is, you got to do it. I don't need the mesa anymore. I don't need the female facilitators as much as I did before. The females were a big integral, and they still are, but not as much. With the presence of a made member on a yard. So all these prisons, I don't know how many prisons they have now. They have a lot of them in California. They all have workers. They all have inmates that are facilitating and paying the piper. And most of them have a made member there. to on the spot oversee. You know,
So we don't want to go through your whole book because we want people to buy it. So we're going to tell them, and this is something they can get on Amazon, right?
they can get on Amazon.
So
yes.
we're going to put a link to that. What I want to do is jump forward a little bit because you have a unique ending. And actually, you told me even yesterday, you said, no, you're not going to believe the reasons why I did what I did. But at some point, I mean, you've been in and out of prison. I mean, you've committed murders. At some point, though, that comes to an end, and you start doing things for the government.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that journey. What happened to start you, like again before, like you were young and you started taking this path? What started you down that path to where you decided to and I'll let you tell the story. I don't want to, but at some point you're actually working with the government.
Right. I did a lot of damage in a short period of time. I was not. I was a designer of evil, and not only was I organizing violent incidents, but I was on the front lines. So that's what gave me the respect, the reputation. The more you kill for the organization, the more you demonstrate your loyalty. They don't care what you did 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever. That's all cool. What are you doing for us now? What have you done lately?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of...
It sound like the federal government too, Steve?
Oh yeah, that's what you do when you go to be a supervisor.
Right. So I'm kind of putting that in a nutshell. So I was in the highest standing possible at the time. And I get arrested for 2 homicides in Kern County, in Bakersfield. It was a rival gang member. It was like a twofold thing. It's a revenge hit on a rival prison gang member from the NF, and also it was an area where he was selling dope, and we coveted that territory, so we were going to get that territory.
How long were you out of prison when this happened?
September, October. About 4 months. About 4 months. And so my crime partner and I, Sailor, went. I had a female installed, the sister of a Mexican Mafia member in Bakersfield, and I gave her the names of 3 targets from Bakersfield that we were looking for. Mexican Mafia dropout, the leader of the NF, and then this other guy, Woodsy, the revenge target. So she couldn't find 2 of them, but she found Woodsy and Woodsy's brother. We utilized her because one of the brothers had the hots for her. So we used her to open the door to the residence. We went in, and we executed the 2 of them. When I'm in the Kern County Jail, I'm probably at the depth, not the height, but at the depth of my depravity, in my way of thinking. I knew I was facing the death penalty, but they ended up doing away with it retroactively, so I wasn't going to get gassed. So now the prospect of doing life in prison was what I was facing. That didn't deter me. In a 19-year period, I did 17 years behind bars, which isn't nothing compared to the way they're giving out time today. But at the time, I'm on my way to doing a whole lot of time, and I'm thinking life in prison. It's a family reunion. We're at our... mentally, spiritually, we're at our finest when we're behind bars. And we run things from the prison system. So you still have your status, your power, and everything. So that didn't faze me. That didn't deter me. Sick. I was sick with that mentality. So every Sunday, they would allow people from the churches in Kern County to come in and visit the inmates. I was on walk-alone status, 3 deputy escorts.
What does that mean, walk-alone status?
You couldn't coexist with other inmates.
Okay.
You walk alone.
Got it.
And a 2 deputy escort to the shower, like a 6 deputy escort for Sailor and I. He was on a different tier. We'd go on the elevator together to our court appearances, shackled, leg irons, the whole thing, and back. And that was kind of like our status. And considered extremely dangerous, the whole ball of wax.
I want to ask you a question about that because that ties into what you're saying. When you first arrived and you saw the the gun towers, the guard towers. That's like, hey, I'm a badass. So when you're going to court too, and they have to go through all these precautions, is that also kind of like a rush? It's like, I am so bad, you got to shackle me up head to toe.
Totally, it is. I'm a badass. I need this, to keep me from killing somebody. Like, what's the name of the movie? Silence of the Lamb. Kind of guy. And I laugh when I see the movie because there's very few guys that dangerous that are going to attack staff. You almost got to be a lunatic. We weren't lunatics. It was controlled depravity. Is what it was. Controlled violence.
Controlled violence. That's what I can say, because if you start attacking the staff, they have ways of really making your life difficult too. Everybody wants to just, even from the staff side, everybody wants to get along.
And it wasn't even that. It was that we weren't afraid of doing time. If the police arrest you, yes, sir. For the most part, submit to the handcuff, you're going to jail. It's like a game with rules that was observed by both sides. Police. Now and then you'd get somebody that, I'm going to shoot it out. Some nut, and boom, 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 and all that, and they shoot it out. Maybe they kill a police officer or a prison guard, and maybe they get killed or whatever. But for the most part, no. So I'm in the jail with this depraved mind. When these people would come in to witness to the other inmates on single cell status, I wasn't the kind of guy that would disrespect anybody, so I would cover my eyes with a towel and lay down on my bunk and just ignore them, pretend like I was asleep. So one day, so they'd just go by me. And so one day, I decided I was bored and I was going to be awake to shoot the breeze with whoever came to my cell. It was an old man, 80-some-year-old man. His name was Nathaniel Elrich, and I still remember. He stopped in front of my cell. He was surprised to see me up because he's used to seeing me asleep or faking it. And so a relationship started, just a conversation relationship. He would always pray for me, and I was amazed. I remember thinking, why would a guy like him, he seemed so genuine, why would he pray for an animal like me? I don't deserve his prayers. I mean, so I looked at him and I said, man, this guy, he's a good man. I mean, he's a sincere to not look at me in a different light, right? And so all of a sudden I started thinking about my victims, and I started experiencing remorse, which is a word that was not in my vocabulary. When you're demented, you don't think of that.
What's the worst, up until that point, what's the worst thing you ever felt whenever you pulled the trigger or did anything? Did anything affect you at all?
I wanted to get to the Dodger game before. I wanted to beat the traffic to the Dodger game before beat the traffic and get there in time to watch batting practice. I mean,
so absolutely
those
no
were your
second thoughts.
Yeah, there was no. I mean, everything was just like business. Like, okay, you're killing somebody. I mean, it's like I'm filing. I have to mail this letter at the post office. I mean, there's no.
It was a task to be done, and now that you're done with it, time to move on to the next thing.
That's how desensitized we were to that. There's nothing negative about it. We're at the game, eating a Dodger dog, laughing and talking about the expression on his face or their face when they were done, and then watching the game and sleeping like a baby. So there was nothing like that. So now I got these people here, and I'm thinking, I'm feeling remorseful. In my mind, I started replaying a lot of my victims, most of my victims, and how they died, how they must have felt when they died. How did their families react when they received the news of their loved one's demise? How would my family feel if they received the same news of me being killed? So all those things, and I started feeling bad. It's like, and like a voice talking to me saying, hey, dude, you can't show weakness like that. What's wrong with you? You shouldn't be thinking that way. But I found myself thinking that way, and so that was the first hurdle. The biggest hurdle was forgiveness. They were always talking about forgiveness, and I'm like, no, I don't know about that one. I don't know that the Lord can forgive me for all these killings. I said, just the deputies at Escort, they were very professional, but if looks could kill, Sailor and I would be dead. You could tell they hated our guts. And my victims' families, I don't expect them to forgive me. So how can I be forgiven? Who's this God that would forgive me for anything I've done? So that was the hardest obstacle. And then over time, one day I said, you know what? I asked Nathaniel, I said, so how do I do this? He says, well, I can lead you to the Lord. I go, no, can I do it alone? Can I talk to the big guy by myself? He says, sure you can. And he kind of guided me and said, what you do is you confess your sins, you ask him, you acknowledge that Jesus died for you, and you ask him to come into your heart. And so, I said, okay, I'll let you know what happens. So that night, you had a question?
Well, right before that night, from the first time Nathaniel talked to you till this point, how long of a process was that?
I would say about a month.
Okay.
About a month of reading stuff and literature. He would Bible he gave me that I couldn't make heads or tails of, and stuff like that. And so now, that night, I remember I got on my knees in the darkness of my cell. Nobody heard me because it's just me talking to the Lord, in a low tone. And I confessed all my sins that I could remember. There's probably multitudes of them. And then there's things that I'm sure I forgot that I said, I know you know which ones I missed, so I'm asking you to forgive me for all of them, and I believe that that your son Jesus died for me. I went through all the things that he told me, kind of like a blueprint, and then I remember I cried. It was more like a therapeutic cry, and I felt like something exited my body, and so I wrote that off at that time as just the emotion. Later in life, when I thought back about it, I says, I wonder if those were the demons that left my body to never reappear. Because according to what people I've talked to in my Christian church, is that you can never, once you're a believer in Christ, you can never be possessed by a demon. You can be influenced, but you can never be possessed. In other words, a demon can never take up residence in your body. So I think that's what happened. I think the demons left my body.
You think they left your body, but so at some point after that, you must have been tempted with like the ability to do a hit again, or somebody need you to do something. How did you know? Did anything change for you after that when you were, because you're a made guy. I mean, you're the top of the top.
Right.
Now you got to hit somebody. What happens now?
Oh, no, I'm in custody. I'm in the jail.
Okay.
So they come in, the guys from the church, and I tell them, yeah, I did what you said. I mean, I confessed everything. I didn't hear any voices. I really don't feel any different. And the old man laughed and said, remember what I'm going to tell you. He said, you're not saved by feelings. You're saved by faith. So I never forgot that. You can have a headache. It doesn't matter. Your feelings do not dictate your salvation. Your feelings have nothing to do with it. If you feel good, that's great. But feelings are fickle, as they say. And he says, your faith is the reason that you are saved. I go, okay, that's good to know. So my next concern, I had a case I was fighting, right? 2 murder cases. But I'm thinking, okay, when I get convicted of these and I go back to prison doing life, how am I going to tell my brothers that I'm done? I want nothing to do with them anymore, because that means I get killed. So that's what's going through my mind. I worry about it a little bit, and then I go, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. So I prayed to the Lord, and I said, you take this problem and handle it, because I'm not going to worry. I'm going to finish my case here, and whatever happens, happens. So the next thing that happened is the 2 murder cases were dismissed on a legal technicality, a speedy trial denial thing. They produced a new witness too late on the day that we were going to start trial. They all of a sudden reveal a new witness, so violating the discovery order. But no court, I'm in Kern County is a hang-em high redneck county. There's no way a judge in Kern County will dismiss murder cases against a big city boy coming in and killing one of its citizens, right? But he did, this judge. And man, so the people come in from the church and they're praising God, and we prayed for you, and he opened the doors. And I'm looking at them sideways like, God didn't do that. I mean, I'm still attributing it just to the shenanigans of the attorneys. So now I have an opportunity. My discharge from parole is coming up in 1 month. I'm in the highest standing possible with the fellas. I just beat 2 murder cases. No charges pending.
Were they not going to? I mean, they could have refiled, right? Why didn't they?
Let me get there.
Okay.
Okay. So they when that's all over, Saylor gets out first because he's already discharged off parole. I'm waiting to be discharged. This took place in January of '77. In March is my discharge date. So I call up my mom. I decide I'm going to work undercover, helping the authorities. I tell my mom, I want you to call my parole officer, Mr. Rubio, and tell him I want to speak to somebody from the SSU. SSU was an internal branch, investigative branch, a special services unit. That's all I knew. These guys were always trying to get us on the streets, investigators. So she said, what's SSU, mijo? And I tell her, Mom, don't worry about it. Just tell him and he'll know. I don't want my mom knowing too much. And so I get a visit from Gil Avila, Chile from DEA, who was the head of the prison gang task force, and Rick Minjares, who was a SSU agent. So they both come in to visit me. They take me out to an office there, and both of them, their body language is like, no way. This guy's playing some kind of game.
Yeah, we don't get somebody of your stature and your level going, hey, I want to be an informant now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they were understandably wary of my intentions. Was I wanting to gloat? Was I, what was my game? And Chile tells me, he says, so what do you have to gain by all this? Why are you turning against your brothers? High standing, you're in the best standing. You just beat the cases, blah, blah, blah. I said, I want to help. I couldn't tell them about the Christian thing. I said, no, they're not going to understand that, right?
And they would. I mean, and in fact, if you had told me that, I would have said, "Oh yeah, everybody finds a job in
Jailhouse
Jesus."
Conversion. Yeah. No. And so I told him simply, I said, look, I'm tired of killing people. I want to help put away people that are doing what I used to do. That was it. He said, okay, well, we'll see. Here's my card. When you get out, give us a call. So the day I get out, I'm going to take the Greyhound and drive back to L.A., and as I'm walking from the jail with a little box and I got my street clothes on, a car pulls up alongside of me, and it's Chile. He says, Mundo, don't look our way. Keep looking straight. Keep walking, and we'll meet you behind on the other side of the tracks behind the bail bonds building. I said, okay, because there's trustees around. If they see me get in a cop car, that grapevine, Yeah. So I walk across the tracks behind the bail bonds building, and there's Rick Minjares has the door open, and I get in the car, and as we're driving over the grapevine, they're picking my brain, asking me things. Basically, there's nothing I can do but talk, but I don't know where anybody's at yet. So the first guy I gave him was Alfie Sosa, who was hiding in Tijuana. He was wanted on 5 or 6 homicides, and I easily and quickly discovered where everybody was, all the fugitives were at, for sure. The guys that were out, I right away knew where they were at, but the fugitives started calling in from where they were at. I was at my mom's house. Remember, no cell phones in those days. Mm-hmm. So they were calling my mom's. Joe Morgan was on the run, and he was in Oregon in his camper. He heard I was out. He was on a phone with a lot of static. Hey, congratulations, brother. Alfie was in Tijuana. He called,
that's amazing. I'm sorry. It's even without the internet and all the mobile phones, how fast word gets around the minute you get out.
Mm-hmm. Well, they check in. What they do is they would always call and check in with facilitators that we had. And then the facilitators would keep them up to date with whatever they needed to know. And I guess the word already gotten out that we had beat the cases, that Saylor was already out. They fixed him up with drugs and money, car, whatever. And then now when I got out, and Mundo's getting out, he's discharging in March. So they kind of already knew. So when my mom's phone rang and then it was Joe. So now I know where Joe's at. And I told Chile and the task force, I says, so we can't do nothing yet. Let him work his way here and I'll get him for you, but don't Don't burn me. Don't get me, in a position where I get killed. So they understood the value of keeping me alive. So they let me kind of handle those things, but they were still wary because I hadn't given them anybody yet until I gave them Alfie. Actually, we went to Tijuana, across the border. Went to Tijuana to visit him at a residence, and when we came, and Chile had told me ahead of time, when you come back, at some point we'll make contact with you. I said okay. So I figured when I got back to LA, right? When we get back, we're at the border, and the customs guy does his job. He's smiling and ID, blah blah, driver's license, whatever, and then all of a sudden his demeanor changes. A buzzer went off, and I guess, and he says, "Can you pull your car over to the
secondary inspection?"
Yeah, secondary inspection. So these guys in suits come out and they walk with me as I'm maneuvering the car slowly that way. Secondary inspection. They escort us to a lobby area where Sailor and I sit, and then they pull Sailor to a room. About 10 minutes later, he comes back out. Sits next to me. I said, "What's up?" He says, "They want to know where Alfie's at." What'd you tell them? I told him to get fucked. Okay. So they call me in. I go in and there's Chile. Right? There's Chile and the task force guys. And he says, "We don't have that much time. We don't want Sailor to think that And he says, "So give me the directions." I said, "Well, you turn left on Cananea, you go by the pharmacy, make a right, and he's the second house in the back." "Okay, go back out." So we're going to release you very shortly. So I go back out, sat next to Sailor. Sailor, so what did they ask you? Same thing. They want to know where Alfie's at. What'd you tell them? I told him to get fucked. Oh, okay. So Sailor had turned. I didn't know Sailor had turned, and he didn't know I had turned.
No.
Right? Yeah.
I'm shocked by that.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
Because when Sailor got out, you said they gave him a gun, car, drugs, and stuff?
Yeah, but I didn't know he had turned.
Why had
No, wait a minute. When he got out in January, he hadn't turned yet. He was still dirty.
That's what I meant.
When I got out in March, he had already turned.
How did they get him to turn?
He got arrested in a sweep. I have the article when it happened. The sweep took place about 2-3 days before I got out in March, like first days of March. And so he got caught up in a sweep. He was in the, what do they call it, downtown Parker Center, the Glass House, downtown LA. So he was there, and they hit him from both sides. They're talking to him about his kids. All he could think of, he told me, was his kids crying. His kids were crying when they knocked the doors down and they got the dope and this and that. And so he decided right there that was it for him. And he told them, "I will give you anybody you want except Mundo." Because we were not only homeboys, but I had been engaged to his sister. We were multiple time crime partner. He didn't want to give me up. When I turned, I told them this, not knowing nothing about Sailor. I told the task force the same thing. So maybe they thought that was a common, what kind of game are these guys playing or something. I told them the same thing without knowing that he had turned, right? So when we're on our way back from Tijuana, when we crossed the border and we're coming back from Tijuana after both of us went in and talked to Chile, we both knew we went in to talk to Chile, but we both lied to each other about what we told him and what, and all that. So as we're driving on I-5 heading north back home, Sailor later tells me, he said, "Man, I wanted out. I wanted the marshals to take me over," because he ended up in Witsec. "I wanted out because Sailor he telegraphs, he's too excitable. And he telegraphs. I was cool under fire. I don't telegraph anything, but Sailor was he says, "Mundo knows me like a book. Don't worry about Mundo. They don't want to tell him that I'm working for them." And I asked Chili later, "Why didn't you tell me? That way we could have worked more comfortably." He said, "That would have been a legal nightmare in court. How are we going to explain that to the court? No." Right. Yeah, it couldn't happen that way. And we wanted the integrity to be genuine and not something that could have been contrived or made up. So
So you told me to wait, but I have to ask you because you didn't get to it. How is it you avoided getting the charges filed against you, refiled against you, the two homicides?
I didn't get. What happened is,
They used it to make a deal with you?
I worked undercover for 14 months, right? Towards the end, in early '78, I'm notified by a dirty judge that the appellate court justice was going to overturn the murder counts. There was no warrant out yet, but they had appealed.
They reversed the prior court's decision to dismissal, and now they're going to refile on you.
Yes, they're going to refile. She kind of warned. So I told the task force, I told them, hey, I'm going to take a little vacation because basically I'm going to be on the run. There's no warrant out now, so there's no reason for anybody to arrest me, including you guys. And so I'm taking a little vacation, and I will turn myself into you guys at some point soon. But all that undercover work is stressful because you never know when you're going to get blasted and somebody's going to find out something. Mm-hmm. There's so much I don't have the time to talk about, I'm sure. But there's so many things that happened while I was undercover that contributed to the stress. And so now I want to take a little vacation. So I end up getting arrested in May of '78 by all kinds of agencies that converged. It was a broken play where he didn't know who he was. It was the border of Montebello PD. You had CDC. You had East LA sheriffs. You had Monterey Park PD, all converging, and the radio was still blaring to send more units because I'm armed and dangerous. I'm not busting a grape. I got my hands up, and Sergeant Sajani is throwing down on undercover agents from somewhere else, and they're throwing down on him, and he slowly produces a badge, and I'm in the middle thinking, oh shit, this is gonna be like Bonnie and Clyde.
Holy cow!
Yeah, you're gonna get taken out by friendly fire, and here you are trying to surrender. Well, how did they find out where you were at?
I had some people selling dope for me that I still maintained that relationship, and I was living in a apartment in Monterey Park, and so the guy that was supposed to pick up a batch of heroin, he's always early, wasn't even around. So my theory is that he gave me up.
Because he didn't show up.
Yeah,
but you're supposed to be cooperating, but yet you're double dealing there. You're still dealing dope.
Yes, yeah, I was, and that's like another story. That's because there's more to it. You know, there's even a 180.
We're going to do another interview with Mundo because you got so much good stuff here.
And you want to know about. You're going to want to know about this because I did become rogue. Mm-hmm. When you're working undercover, I don't care who you are. If you're from that world, a criminal world, and if you're not, if your every move isn't monitored by law enforcement,
right,
you're going to go rogue in some form or fashion.
Right. That's why
you're going to go back to your old habits.
We used to run.
Well, it's not even habits. There's more to it. It's maintaining my cover,
right,
but profiting from it as well.
And there's new opportunities coming along all the time. It's a challenge for us because you know the light, and this could be our next interview with you because it's a pain in the ass for us.
Yeah.
Because we don't...
It's potentially embarrassing to you guys.
And it kills your credibility as a witness down the road. Exactly.
Anything they used you on, they'll say, well, at the same time you said that my client did this, you were dealing dope, right, and ordering hits. It's there you go, cases go out there.
Well, I explained it, and I testified in many cases, and they all got convicted or they pled out. But I explained it. I said, hey, task force didn't know, because they didn't know. Mm-hmm. Chili told me specifically, he looked me in the eye, and he said, Mundo, and this could be a preview to that.
Right.
Mundo, I cannot give you a license to commit a crime, any crime. But, and he kind of gave me a weird look. He said, we're not going to be looking at you very closely. So basically, he's telling me, do what you got to do to stay alive. Don't worry. We want the bigger game on bigger things, and we'll deal with the other stuff when it comes. He was saying that without saying that.
Yeah,
was my interpretation.
Yeah,
but I would never lay him out that way in court. I would never say, "Well, you know, he looked at me this." I'm telling you guys that now because it's all over.
Right.
Yeah, and that's, let's cut that right there, because this is going to be a whole nother
we
conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna,
which I really want to do, because I want our listeners to understand how all this develops, what the regulations are, what can happen. It'll be a great interview.
Yeah, we'll do that. So, but you know what? But just the whole masterclass so far about how you organized, how you brought things together, how you structure things, and the amazing thing was the continuous evolution of MA and Mexican Mafia. You adapted to the times. The chew changed. Your leadership structure changed. I mean, you adapted to things on the street.
The use of sureños.
The sureños, camaradas.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, look.
Plus, I mean, we still got to get in. Not today, but we still got to get into how you are where you are today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're going to
it's
do that. So
fantastic.
let's figure out how to set that up. So let's call this part one. This is part one of
There you go.
Mexican Mafia, The Gang of Gangs. His book is called that. The Life of Ramon Mundo Mendoza, From Altar Boy to Hitman. It is the second edition. And I know a lot of folks have gotten it here. I know, Murph, you've got a copy sitting in front of you right now.
Thank you very much.
The difference is the second edition, I added more photographs that I had. I also added the telegram directing me to go for my physical to go to Vietnam. I mean, so
Yeah,
I
some more
upgraded.
backstory.
Yeah, I upgraded stuff. And then what was the other thing? I added a chapter called Officer's Discretion, which after you guys read it, you might want to touch on that because it's very interesting.
Well, let's figure out how to set that up. So we're going to bring this part to a close. Like I said, we're down here at the Southern California Gang Conference. I know you've had a lot of people over there. People are very interested in talking. And don't get me wrong, nobody's approving or giving you a free pass for what you did, but you did your time. You're out. And the fact that you could come down here and sit in front of these folks and tell your story, I mean, we appreciate it, because very rarely do you get to sit down with somebody. You have people who've, they're on the fringes, right? But to get somebody like you who was at the top of the game and made the decisions you did and then made the decision to get out, we applaud you for that decision to get out.
Thank you.
So, all right, don't go anywhere. Everybody else right now, stay tuned for the debrief. Man, if that just does not, well, you and I were just talking right before we did the recorded the outro. If that doesn't give you goosebumps, I mean, it's just, he admitted to 9, 6 in prison, 1 he went to jail for to begin with, 2 he did afterwards. He cooperated with the state, and he's probably good potentially for up to 30.
Yeah, we haven't, like I said in the intro, we haven't even scratched the surface with Mundo here. But I think if we do, and again, we want to hear your responses. If you don't want to hear any more from Mundo, you just tell us. But we think it's an opportunity to see the inside of what really goes on in these type of criminal organizations. That's why we put him on here. And our thanks go to Mundo for taking the time to talk to us. He has a little business going on, and he took the time out from his business to give us this interview. So, I'm not sure honored is the right word, but
you know what? It was refreshing. And the thing is too, but it's important that we have conversations like this. So we're very pleased that he took his time with us. To do that, like you say, honored is a different word. We come from different sides of the spectrum when it comes to justice. So, but what I can say, that like you say, we've talked to people who are legitimately living a new life. They've turned over a leaf, and then there are some people who just fake it. He's sincere. And one of the things he wants to do is he really wants to change this culture, keep kids out of gangs. He knows full well what it's like. So,
absolutely.
but this is one of the things, folks, if you can't define, there's an old saying in the military, if you can't define your enemy, you can't defeat your enemy. You have to understand what goes into the thinking of the minds of your adversary, why respect is so important to them, why perceived slights create gang wars, why territory is so important, and how law enforcement can do a better job of interacting with them, how to find the levers they need to pull so they can get people to tell them information. Or like with Mundo, eventually he realized, this was not going to turn out well for him,
and for him, even mentioning the 6 murders that he wasn't charged with, most of you already know this, there is no statute of limitations on murders. So it's not that he's trying to avoid things. I think he was extremely open and honest with us. And Mundo, we truly appreciate that. We appreciate your time. Pleasantly surprised with the interview that you gave us. And you know what? I can see we were home no time before he contacted us via email to pursue this with us. So, I can foresee this being a friendship. As strange as that sounds, coming from, my 38 years in law enforcement, your time in law enforcement, his time as a bad guy, and now his time as a good guy. That's a strange thing to say, but I do see a friendship developing here.
Well, Murph, I go back and I think about, we were at war with Japan and Germany, and now they're two of our closest allies.
Yeah.
The world changes.
You learn from your enemies.
Yeah. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you did, head on over to Apple, Spotify, just, rate those 5 stars. Tell us what you think about it, right? Also head on over to gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got the link to the book there. Follow us on social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. And what we forgot to mention in the intro, we'll do in the outro, but patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We've got a lot of great content on there. We just released our You Can't Make This Shit Up. Some interesting stories on that. We've got our case of the month coming up, 911, what's your emergency? We'll do our narcometer review, and then our Warden of the Throne exclusive for our people at the highest levels. But you guys head on over there, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. And again, we just want to thank you guys for listening. Again, like Murph said, drop your notes to us, whether it's on Facebook, put it on Twitter. Just hit us up, let us know what you think about the episode. And so we thank you guys. Stay tuned, because there probably looks like there will be a part 2 to Mundo. But thank you guys once again for playing the biggest, baddest, and as you found out, the most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.